I'll call the city council meeting to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Angelli. Present. Vining. Here. Germaini.
Here.
Lamore.
Here.
Felder.
Here.
Whitman.
Excused.
Mayor Clark.
Here. I'd ask we all please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We are grateful for the great resources of this land and for the freedom which has been its heritage. Inspire us to serve with fairness, humility, and integrity, and to work for the welfare of this community. We ask for guidance and direction as we come together.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, first item, please.
Be any amendments to the agenda?
Looking at administration or council, any considerations for amendments to the agenda?
Your Honor, I think we should probably put some clarity to the closed executive session for pending litigation involving 44 and 48 South Monroe.
So we'll have that to note that as we get to the close of the meeting for the executive session, which is on the agenda. Other comments? Seeing none. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item are citizen comments not related to an agenda item.
At this time, there's an opportunity for citizens' comments not related to an agenda item. If it's on the agenda, that means we'll have opportunity to discuss it then. There's also an opportunity at the end of the meeting for citizens' comments. If there are any comments, just mindful of the rules of the chamber regarding addressing the council and the chair, as well as time that we place on that so we can hear from everybody in a judicious fashion. Any comments from those present here this evening not related to an agenda item? Seeing no comments at this time. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is a public hearing, item 2508, public hearing, Public Act 425 agreement with Frenchtown Charter Township. The public hearing to receive and review comments on the proposed agreement, and there are no comments on file in the clerk's office.
Thank you. So at this time, we should ask first Mr. Pastu if there's a...
I could have
yes, please do.
the city attorney, Matt Buds, give an introduction to council in the audience.
As background, Your Honor and Counsel, this is the time for the public hearing that will be held shortly on the 425 agreement involving the properties commonly known as 1284 North Telegraph Road, which we'll refer as the Lazy Boy property, and 1225 North Dixie Highway, which we'll refer to as the Quality Inn property. And this is consistent with Mr. Cochran's presentation earlier this evening during the work session. Essentially, a 425 agreement is typically used for a conditional transfer of property from one jurisdiction to another. In this case, what you have before you is a contract that would essentially swap two pieces of property. The key parts of this are that it's to support an economic development project, specifically the redevelopment of the former Lazy Boy headquarters. Would also state that it is to straighten borders, which, as many of us know, are somewhat disjointed and unique between the township and the city. Would also create a single jurisdiction for the more harmonious development of these two parcels in large part, though I will say there are two pieces that are not included in the transfer from Frenchtown to the city that's being proposed. Other factors are that there would be consistent delivery of services and the use of the city's economic development and brownfield resources for the redevelopment of the Lazy Boy site. A few of the key pieces of the agreement are that the water services that would be provided to the Quality Inn parcel would be treated as with several others as stated in the agreement, such as those along North Monroe Street, like the A&W property, that would be township customers on city water. It also contemplates that this agreement will be relatively short-term in its duration, that it would be effective in its interim status until the issuance of December tax bills this winter, and that the agreement would become final with the jurisdictional transfer becoming final in middle of December of this year, at which point the parcels that would be transferring from Frenchtown to the city, which is largely the approximately 8 acres behind the Lazy Boy headquarters, would become finally within the jurisdiction of the city, and the parcel that the Quality Inn sits on would become finally part of the jurisdiction of Frenchtown Township. And that's the basics of the overall agreement, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone would have on that front.
Hearing, is there any questions for Mr. Buds from the council?
No.
Seeing none. Moving forward at this time, I'll open the public hearing regarding item 2508, public hearing, Public Act 425 agreement between Frenchtown Charter Township. The public hearing to receive and review comments on the proposed 425 agreement with Frenchtown Township. Any comments from those present here this evening regarding this public hearing? Any comments from those present? Any comments from council at this point regarding the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Just going to make a quick comment on that because, as Mr. Pastu said earlier this evening during the work session, Economic Development Director, Mr. Mark Cochran, did do a presentation during the work session. Of course, being on MPAC, the opportunity is there for those that are present or those that may not have seen it earlier. It is an opportunity to go back through MPAC and, of course, on YouTube to view that presentation if you want some greater details regarding that proposal. So with that, clerk, next item, please.
The next item is communication, item 2510, meeting report, conversion of West 7th and West 8th to two-way traffic.
Thank you. Mr. Pastu, if you would start, please.
Part of what council had asked in considering the implementation of a traffic control order converting both West 7th and 8th Street is to do so before its potential implementation is to schedule an informational meeting regarding the conversion with property owners along West 7th and 8th. We had that informational meeting on July 17th, held between 5 and 6:30 p.m. here in the chambers. Attending on behalf was the city traffic engineer with OHM advisors, Steve Loveland, city engineer Patrick Lewis, and myself. Property owners along the street were notified of the informational meeting. 8 individuals signed and registered that attended the meeting. They were, I think, to say opposed to the conversion of two-way traffic, mostly on 7th Street. Felt that the road wasn't wide enough for two-way traffic. Traffic volume increased because they didn't anticipate that anybody would use 8th Street if that was implemented. And so, given the fact that there was some concern expressed, I felt I'd put this as a communication item for the city council to discuss further if you desire.
Comments or questions from council for Mr. Pastu?
Your
Councilman
Honor,
Michelangelo?
I think the action that council took was to approve the 2 traffic control orders to make 7th and 8th two-way, with the understanding that we would have an informational meeting to allow the residents, or at least inform the residents of the conversion. So technically, the project has been approved, but I'm more than happy to hear what the residents have to say.
Yeah, we have, I believe, residents that are here, and I give them the opportunity now. Obviously, we have public comment time, not related to an agenda item, but we could take your comments at the end, but I think it's appropriate we do it now with the discussion of the topic at hand. It ties the comments to the conversation while the agenda item is, the communication, I should say, is before the council.
Your Honor, I have a question
Yes.
for city manager. How many notices were sent to both 7th and 8th Street, approximately?
Oh, I couldn't tell you since Mr. Lewis's office, but I thought he said a couple hundred notices went out.
And then do we have any residents from 8th Street that attended the meeting?
I think there was one that did sign that attended
registry?
from 8, yeah.
Hold on. No, we'll give an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Okay, those are my questions.
Okay. At this time, because we are on the communication regarding the, as was stated by Mr. Pastu, if there's those present that wish to speak, we'll take public comment on this item at this time. So if there are, I just ask that you approach the podium, please, name and address, and just be mindful of our time. And if you have a comment at this time, it'd be appropriate. Yes, ma'am, if you want to start. Yeah, right here at the podium. Thank you.
My name is Karen.
In the microphone, because the clerk here, of course, keeps our records and makes sure that we know who's here, and it's a document. So please do.
My name is Karen Surgison. I live at 612 West 8th Street. I was unable to attend the meeting on the 17th, I think it was. My vehicle broke down. I had to get towed the night before. I would have been here. I oppose that, the two-way traffic. Right now, the street is, the one-way is, people drive down 8th Street crazy. I mean, I have to put my blinker on to go into my driveway. I am lucky to have a driveway. Some of these people don't have a driveway, and they park on the one side, which is legal. My question is if the two-way is implemented, are they gonna be able to park on both sides of the street?
Mr. Pastu?
I think we would look at parking just on one side, on both 7th and 8th as well.
Okay,
So you couldn't accommodate two-way traffic and parking on both sides of the street.
right. I know on Bacon, between 7th and 8th, they're allowed to park on both sides of the street, and you can barely get through there. I mean, if you don't watch it, you're hitting one of the sides.
And if I might add, that's one way at that point, I believe. It's
No.
two-way there? Okay, yeah.
Okay, and the first meeting I was questioning, was that a vote on that, where I was unable to attend it? Was there a vote taken on that, or?
If I may, through the mayor, it was an informational meeting to share the traffic analysis that was prepared by our traffic engineering consultant with OHM advisors.
Okay, I don't know. But like I said, I'm on 8th Street actually on the corner of Bacon and 8th Street, and traffic right now, just being one way, is crazy. 7th Street's gonna pick probably most of the traffic up. And it's not wide enough for, can I ask why the change is being made?
Was the city's looking at, I could ask Mr. Pastu if he can fill in, I guess,
Yeah,
but go ahead.
In a broader context, one of the things, and I shared this with the attendees at the informational meeting, is the fact that you have a one-way street leads to traffic speeds that are typically going to be higher, and there's a certain desire that the city would like to see these streets in the neighborhoods turn more to their original intent, which is residential. By going to the two-way conversion and allowing also on-street parking, it does slow the rate of traffic down through those areas, and I think that's a key component as far as converting it, if you will, back to a much more residential-oriented type of neighborhood, as opposed to cars zipping through at a pretty good pace.
Okay. I have one more thing about it. Because of the signs and everything, is this gonna make our assessments go up and property taxes go up because it is a two-way and it's a different zoning, or I don't know how to put
No,
it?
that has no impact.
Okay, that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
My name is Curtis Fuqua. I live at 311 West 7th Street. And believe it or not, we got neighbors that have been there since 61 when they changed it from a two-way to a one-way. And the problem I got with it, I sit on my porch a lot. And I tell you what, the traffic just on one way is very higher, because I was here when he was talking about 100 cars. Don't you believe that? In an hour. I count that many in a half an hour. And if you take and make it a two-way street, now you're doubling our traffic. The question I asked him before, I don't understand why we can't put speed bumps out and stop signs. And his excuse is expenses. I don't understand. I pay taxes here. I own 2 homes on 7th Street. And you're gonna tell me you can't put stop signs or signs saying children's play here? We have a lot of little kids on 7th Street, and the People's takes off at Smith Street, which is a 3-way stop, and it's a drag race all the way up to Union Street. Speed bumps would slow that down. You don't have to change the flow of traffic. The answer I got from the city the last time, because I was at the last meeting, they talking about their snow plows would get damaged and stuff. Wait a minute. I know trucks, I know snow plows. They have springs on them. When they go down the street, they actually go over the hills and stuff. We can slow the traffic down without changing the direction. Because if you make 7th and 8th Street two-way, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. From Telegraph down to Monroe Street on 7th Street, it's gonna be a jet. Who gonna get there first? And where I live, most people's park on one side. And the problem is, when you go down that street, we have a lot of cars coming the wrong way going down the street, and they almost run into each other. And there's no control there, no stop signs, they just jet. And the question I asked this gentleman last time I was here, why can't we get policemen to watch these people going through this stop sign? They go through Smith's stop sign like it ain't even there. And that's a problem for us because I got neighbors that got kids. All my kids are grown, but my neighbors have little kids and they play. And as we all know, kids do not always look when they go in the street. Plus, we got school buses that pick kids up on this corner of Smith. And you really think that these people in such a hurry gonna stop for them? Why are we changing it? It's been that way since '61. Why are we changing it? The answer was, it improves the community. We don't have a lot of vacant houses in our area. We have a family atmosphere in our area. Most everybody know each other. Most of us in our 50s and 60s. So why are you changing something that's not broke? We pay you to improve things, but not change things where it make it worse for us. I don't want to see the traffic get no higher than what it is now. I got a driveway, but a lot of my neighbors don't have driveways. So what they gonna do? We already got people parking off the side streets on 7th Street because they don't have a place to park. That's not fair to us on 7th Street. We can't have people come over because guess what? If you ain't got a driveway, you gotta park on the street. Now imagine one line of parking, cars on one side of the street, and you want it two-way? My truck and another truck cannot pass together on 7th Street. And you say, well, people have to be respectful to each other. Me and you both know that's not gonna happen. I see people coming down our street on cell phones, texting, everything. And I'm sitting on the porch. So what make you think that's gonna change when you got double the traffic? Let's be honest with ourselves. The streets are not wide enough for two-way traffic. Save our money and put it somewhere else. We are taxpayers. We are dependent on you to defend us. Do not change something that's not broke. That's all I got to say.
Curtis. Other comments from those present? Yes, so start in the front here. Name, address, please.
My name's Ed Schwartz, 526 West 7th Street. I own 3 houses on the corner of 7th and Bacon right next to each other. It's a fabulous neighborhood, just what Curtis said. You guys got the perfect solution to the problem that doesn't exist. You don't need to do this. Save your money, spend it somewhere else. The next thing is this. Before you can really make progress in a conversation, you have to agree on the basic rules, the basic premise. If I come in here with this idea that the earth is flat, well, we can't really move forward until I get rid of this false premise. For some reason, for the past 5 or 10 years, some city officials have had this idea that increased congestion, narrow lanes, and all that stuff is good for business. They tried doing something like this 5 years ago downtown and on the main street, and that was shot down for some reason. What I'm saying is you guys have been duped by some traffic engineering company to convince you that because it's good in Ann Arbor, because it's good in Wyandotte, because it works in Roseville, that you should do it here. I've lived here my entire life. I grew up on Arbor Avenue. I've lived on West 7th Street for 20 years. It's not broken, okay? I'm not aware of the toddlers getting mowed down on West 7th Street because the traffic is going 35 miles an hour. I don't know of any fatalities that people are getting hit. Maybe the police commissioner can fill us in if they are. But basically on West 7th Street, we get the shaft. We get twice as much traffic. Right now, the traffic coming from Telegraph heading east is forced to West 8th Street because it's a one-way street. Traffic is going to continue to go straight down West 7th Street. West 8th Street is going to get the neighborhood that you're proposing. West 7th Street gets double the traffic. And then when I asked the city engineer and the city manager about what the benefit was, I asked twice, I got the same answer twice. You were gonna give you your neighborhoods back and reduce the average vehicle speed. It's not the average vehicle speed that's the problem. It's the 1 or 2 hot dogs that go 35 or 40. They start at Smith Street and they hot rod it all the way down to Union. He needs 2 guys, one on Bacon sitting on the side street, one on Adams sitting on the side street facing towards West 7th Street. You'd clean up. You guys would be rich. So we get increased traffic congestion. As Curtis was saying, in the past, your predecessors, the people who sat in those seats in 1960, they made that decision, probably for the same reason you guys are thinking you're gonna make it, about improving the neighborhood. I think their decision was better. You don't need to fix something that's not broken. Do you think there's more traffic now than there was in 1960? Do you think the average household in 1960 had 2 or 3 cars like they do today? The 16-year-old daughter didn't have a car in 1960. Today, she's parking on the street in front of my house. Okay, as far as issues go, you guys have never seen me. I've never been to a council meeting. I've never talked to anybody. I tried to schedule a meeting with the mayor, but I was unable to do that. That's because I don't have any issues, because I don't really care what you guys do as long as you're not really affecting me. If you want to make the Winchester Street Bridge abnormally narrow so that it's difficult to drive on, I just kind of put 2 wheels in the turn lane and kind of drive anyways. If you want to plant bushes in the middle of Dixie Highway, I kind of scratch my head and wonder why you're doing it. But I'm not going to call you and I'm not going to complain, because that's not my normal traffic pattern. But when you come over to West 7th Street, where I've lived for 20 years, where I own 3 properties, and you start making improvements that have no benefit, then I'm going to come to your meeting and I'm going to talk to you. And because of this, okay, I'm keeping score. If you can't support me on this issue, I won't be able to support you at the ballot box in November. And I'm going to tell my neighbors how you voted. John voted this way, Brian voted that way. So I don't have any issues. This is my issue. I've lived here for 50 years. I've lived on West 7th Street for 20. Anybody who's ever seen me at a council meeting, speak up, because I don't have problems, because I don't really care what you guys do until you come to my neighborhood. None of you guys live in my neighborhood. I think Paul is the closest that lives to my neighborhood. Maybe John lives kind of close, but you don't live in my neighborhood. Cass Street, closing off Cass Street, bad news. If you lived in that neighborhood, you'd realize people use that entrance into Kroger's all the time. I go to Kroger's probably 4 times a week, maybe 5, every single time. Keeps me off of Monroe Street. If you want to spend some money, fix the alleys. The alleys have been terrible for 7 or 8 years. The alleys have a soup bowl effect, left to right. That's about all I have. But the idea is, the basic premise of narrow lanes, Winchester Street Bridge, planting bushes on Dixie Highway, that's not what the people of Monroe want. We want the free flow of traffic. You got to abandon that idea. You're looking at me telling me the earth is flat. Be careful, don't sail in Lake Erie, you might fall off the edge. Other than that, I'm asking you not to support this issue. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Other comments from those present here this evening regarding this? I'll start with the lady in the back at her. Oh, go ahead. Here, come on up. Name and address.
Hi, I'm Rosalind Lauderdale. I live at 318 West 7th Street. I have 5 kids. I moved into this house 3 years ago. And one of the concerns I had was the traffic as is on 7th Street. Because I do have kids and I don't want to take the chance of them getting hurt. And now you guys are proposing making it a 2-way street. I'm not going to feel safe with my kids being in the front yard at all, even if I'm out there watching them, because accidents happen, even if you're watching them like a hawk. And I'm an overprotective mom. I like to know what my kids are doing, where they're going, who they're hanging out with, everything. You guys are proposing this 2-way street, and like, I make my kids walk in pairs, even my oldest ones, to go to Kroger's. I like them having adult supervision because of the traffic and stuff on 7th Street when they're crossing 7th Street. I don't feel that it would help us, benefit us in any way making it a 2-way street. I mean, like, even in the middle of the night, you hear cars racing. I'm up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. The traffic is horrible at different hours of the night. Yes, there's speeding, but everybody speeds everywhere, even in the country. It's not going to slow them down, even if you do put the speed bumps in that was suggested. Like, I've watched stupid kids do stupid things. They're going to do it, whether you try to prevent it or not. What you are proposing will actually cause accidents, cause issues with our children, cause them to possibly get hurt, because the cars don't pay attention 95% of the time because a lot more younger kids are driving. I think that it would help if you guys left it at 7th Street, one-way street. Because right now, the traffic is diverted actually between 8th Street and 6th Street. I use 6th Street to get to my house when I come down 7th, when I split. Because I live towards Hubble. And it's easier for me. I try to avoid 8th Street because of the speeding and like craziness that happens over there. I don't like even let my kids walk over there. I think that you guys need to leave them both one ways because like the traffic would be horrible. I don't want to put any of my kids, let alone my neighbor's kids, in danger. We have deaf kids that live on our street. And that would put more of them at risk because I've watched the parents, like they'll be watching them and then one of the kids will slip towards the road. If we have two-way traffic, it's going to be harder because it's going to double the road passages. And like, I have trouble getting down 7th Street as is from Hubble to Union because of the cars parking on the side of the road. Like, I have a wide vehicle because I have 7 kids and with me usually, and it's like hard to get down now. You're proposing two-way plus parking on the side. We need the parking on the side because I don't have a driveway. I park off the alley in my backyard. But not everyone has that option either. We need to come up with a different solution instead of changing it to a two-way street. I'm sorry, I don't agree with you guys.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Linda Novak, 415. I emailed everyone here. Is this a done deal? Has that decision already been made to make it a two-way? I mean, was the decision made to approve it?
I'll answer the question. The council had received the traffic study, and the motion that we made was that we accepted and approved 2 traffic control orders, one to make 7th Street two-way, one to make West 8th two-way, subject to the city administration having an informational meeting to tell the neighbors that we were going to make the streets two-way.
Okay, so it's not,
Well, I would say, I'll just be very upfront with you and very honest. I think from my perspective, it's a 90% done deal on my behalf. And I did receive your email, and I did appreciate your comments.
have you considered maybe keeping the commercial traffic off of 7th and 8th Street?
Hard to do since it's a major street, and we can't do that under the state highway.
And you're going to get one of the large towing companies that fly down there. They're probably the biggest offender of that speed limit. And a car coming the other way are going to get by there with cars on the street. There's nowhere for anybody to pull over.
Your Honor, may I?
Yes, Councilman.
Let me just mention some things, okay? From the best understanding that we have, the reason why 7th and 8th Street were made one way was primarily to serve all of the employment that was at the end of 7th Street back in the 60s. You had Lazy Boy Factory,
I'm familiar.
you had West Side Consolidated, and you had Steel Castings. The city turned it to one way in order to let employees, many of them that lived in the city, easy access to their jobs, and then when they got out of their jobs, easy access back through the city. Now, the reason why I know that is because as a kid, I lived over on the corner of 7th and Smith Street when it was two-way. And I remember when the city made it one-way, and it was primarily because of the employment traffic. One of the things that council has looked at is that they have been provided case studies from around the country, several of them, where communities have gone from a one-way to two-way street system. What happens when you go from one-way to two-way, it slows the traffic primarily because traffic is coming in opposite directions. People tend to slow down. The other part is that actually everybody has said that the traffic on 7th, and the lady in the back said that 8th Street is crazy because of the speeds. One-way traffic increases speeds. Two-way traffic doesn't. So the complaints that the neighbors have about the streets being crazy, that the speeds are too high. One young lady over here said she takes 6th Street because it's safer than 7th Street.
not.
Those are all of the arguments to go to a two-way system. Now, in your email, you said that the tow trucks from A1 Towing come down 7th Street.
It's not just A1, it's gyms, it's Stars, it's
but-
everyone.
but-
Do you know how many
But
businesses
what
are
I'm getting
there?
at, A1 Towing is actually, their garage is on 8th Street.
Then they're not the only one that has the commercial traffic that goes,
The other
way.
part is when you take a look at a street network and you make everything one way, you're channelizing the traffic in one direction through a neighborhood. When you make it two-way, the opposing streets two-way, people have choices on how they're going to get to their homes and how they're going to leave. So you're dispersing the traffic. Everybody thinks it's going to increase traffic. The traffic engineers that we hire that do extensive modeling have said that it's not going to increase the traffic.
well,
See, but
I'm open invitation to everybody sitting here to come and spend an afternoon on my porch. I sit there frequently. If I want to leave on Friday night, Thursday night, whenever people are getting out of work and using 7th Street as the dragway through to Telegraph so they don't have the city traffic, I can't get out of my driveway. I cannot back out. I have to wait. Most days, I just pull out and hope they stop. And now you're talking two-way traffic. What are my options? Park on the street?
well, the way that the design is that you'll have two-way traffic and you'll have parking on one side of the street.
We have parking on one side of the
Well, it's going to
street.
be like the other streets in town.
Yeah, well, I
It'd be
can't
like
get out
Arbor
now.
Street, Riverview, it'd be like Cranbrook, it'd be like the other streets where you
But they
have,
don't have
you have
that
two-way
traffic.
traffic with.
They don't have that traffic. And I don't,
Okay, I'm going to get back on track here because there may be others that want to speak. Linda, I understand that you're opposed to the change, correct?
yeah, very much so.
Okay.
If you can keep the commercial traffic off of that street, they're the biggest offender. Put one more stop sign, one more, either on Adams or down somewhere between Smith and Union. That'll slow your traffic. But again, the invitation is open. All of you, come over.
Thank you.
Other comments from those present here this evening? I'll start with the lady in the back. She has her hand up, please.
My name is Rebecca Fortner. I live at 711 West 7th Street. I'm 3 houses from Union. I probably see the people fly the wrong way down 7th Street more than anybody else that's talked here. To the point that I've seen dogs get hit. I personally have had 4 of my vehicles that were hit because someone was coming the wrong way and this person clipped either the front end of my car, a side mirror, whatever. The increase of traffic since I have lived there since '96 has easily tripled. I do worry about my granddaughter being able to play outside. She is only allowed to go in the backyard. I understand that this has been approved and it's going to happen whether I say anything or not. And it's funny because that's what I told every single person that said, you should go tonight, you should go tonight. I said, why? It doesn't matter. And it's really sad that I live on 711 West 7th Street and I feel I don't matter. I feel I don't matter to our Monroe City Council. I feel that I shouldn't even try. And that is a big problem with our country today. Not just Monroe, but our country. We are quitting trying and we are just going ahead with whatever they say. This is not a good idea. It will not turn out good. It will for 8th Street. 8th Street will see less traffic. But I'm telling you, the amount of fire engines that have to go to the old Lazy Boy because of whatever calls are almost daily, and they fly down. I've had ambulances flying the wrong way down 7th Street. You have a straight shot from Monroe to Telegraph. People are not going to take 8th Street to lower the traffic on 7th Street. You're going to take the road of least resistance. So how can you tell me it's going to change the traffic in front of my house? The fear I have that it doesn't matter what I think. How are you going to let me know that I'm the person that lives there and I do matter. This shows me I don't. This is not good for us. It may be good on your paper. You know, I worked for Ford for 20 years before I got a head injury. And we always had a joke that engineers were your worst friends because they would come to you with paper and show you how to put 10 pounds of stuff in a 5-pound bag. And it never worked. And this isn't going to work. I don't care what the papers say. So, thank you for listening. I really hope that you guys vote again and realize that we, the people, don't want it. Even though it looks good on paper, we don't want it.
Thank you. Other comments from those present? Sir, in front, name and address, please.
Jason Getz, 614 West 7th Street. Lived there for roughly 12 years. And you can sit on my front porch like the lady previous, 3-4 people a day going the wrong way down 7th Street already. I believe it just increased traffic volumes. There's already numerous cars my car's been hit 2-3 times. The mirror's been clipped. Damage to it from people driving by and clipping it. I'm guessing it's because people going the wrong way. Don't know for sure. But so I started parking my vehicles in my alley. Now the alley's getting pretty rough too. So, and I know there's numerous people down 7th Street that don't have the option to park in the alley, or they don't have a driveway to park in, so they can only park on 7th Street. So I just, I believe it's going to be a major issue with traffic going through there. I mean, going down 6th Street, people got to pull over to let our other cars through, and it's going to be the same way down 7th. And I just, like I said, I just believe it's going to be an issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Other comments from those present here this evening? See if there's anybody that has not spoken. You have a final comment, ma'am?
Yeah, do I have to come up there?
Yes, please. Just so you know, that it's opportunities usually give opportunity once, but I'll take this comment and we'll see if there's comments from council.
I might be the only one from 8th Street here, but I've talked to other people that live on 8th Street and they're all opposed to it. Can this be put on the ballot as a vote for the people instead of just the council deciding on what to do?
Well, I'm looking at the city attorney and the city manager, but that's not something the city would put on a ballot for a discussion. Looking at the city attorney, there's always Mr. Buds.
Your Honor, I'd want to review that for certainty, but generally speaking, an ordinance could be taken up by a ballot measure, but typically a traffic control order or a policy of the city would not.
Just seems to me that's like a major ordinance. Like I said, I've talked to other people that live on 8th Street. They might not be here, but they all are opposed to it also.
Okay, thank you. So I'll see.
Final comment briefly?
We're not going to go through this twice. I think you had an opportunity to
Real quick,
speak.
the lady in the yellow shirt summarized it very well about the feeling on the group, the lady just before. The fact that at the workshop, they indicated that this has already been approved and it was coming, and then the councilman indicated that he thought it was approved, but he would listen to what the citizens have to say. That right there almost seems to me like it was a little bit backwards. Shouldn't it have been like send out a letter to us first that, hey, we're studying this and here's what we think we'd like to do, and then get our feedback and then approve it after our feedback?
Thank
It's
you.
almost like you're saying we're doing this, we're going to listen to you as a formality, but we're going to kind of shove it down your throat in the end. Please save your money, spend your money on the alleys, do
you.
something different. Our neighborhood is perfect. You did a
course.
great job. Thanks for being our council.
Okay, so I'll see if there's comments from council, because I'll have some as well. Councilman Angelli?
Your Honor, and I don't want the residents to take this in the wrong way, but I've been through a lot of public hearings on traffic control orders. I even consider myself I'm not a traffic engineer, but I always say kiddingly that I think anybody that has a driver's license becomes a traffic engineer and can solve traffic problems. These type of conversions are always difficult because a group of people don't want the change to happen, even though the studies, the engineering studies, everything says it's going to be okay. I guess the only thing I will offer to council is, at some point, we got to move the ball forward on these one-way streets. We should continue, my position is we should continue with the conversion. But we should stipulate, so we're all on the same page, that we have an evaluation after 1 year to see if it worked or not. And if it doesn't work, it hasn't worked as we thought it would work, then we put it back to one way. We're never going to know. We have study upon study that says it's going to work. We have 8 or 9 residents that says it's not going to work. Okay? I guess the only other balancing act is we need, not only on 7th and 8th, but on Harrison and Cass. That's the one-way system that was set up primarily for employment traffic. We need to put it back into neighborhood traffic, and then we need to evaluate it after it's been out. We've seen it operate. And if it hasn't worked, then we can convert it back. All we're talking about is signs. We're not talking about any geometric changes to the street through the neighborhoods. So, I mean, to me, that's a compromise. Let's see if it works. People want speed bumps. People want more stop signs. I will tell you this. If you do a Google search on speed bumps and stop signs, you're going to find out that they actually increase the speed of traffic because people stop and then they go faster. So there's all these different information that's out there. I think the only way that we're going to really find out is by trying it. And if it doesn't work, we convert it back. But I think listening to the dialogue, understanding what our consultants are telling us, maybe the compromise is, let's try it, let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, we'll put it back.
Other council comments? Councilman Moore?
Yeah, Your Honor, I know that we've talked about having the downtown streets turned and converted to two-way, front and first, and possibly we should be the guinea pig before the other people in the audience is a possibility. I'm not suggesting that I'm asking for further comments. I'm just suggesting that it might be a better compromise in the sense that we can see how the two-way traffic works first through the city in that aspect versus going through the neighborhoods and changing those over. And then eventually getting to those and then going on from there, just as a test more or less on us versus them.
I'll have a comment to that, but I'll see if there's other council comments regarding this. Councilwoman Vining.
The downtown area is not residential, so I don't understand how that would give us a comparative.
It is residential.
Much wider. I
Councilman?
believe it's much wider streets and a lot less congestion in terms of housing.
Okay, so I'll have some comments. I'll start with the downtown. You know, I think back when we first started this conversation, might have been even the previous council about one ways and two ways. It could go back too. But in this council, there was discussion of where do you start? We already started about the history of how 7th and 8th Street got changed to begin with. But when you look at the neighboring streets to 7th and 8th, they're two-way. Parking on one side, some have more. And yes, there are some that don't have driveways because the way the design of the city was made many years ago was the alleys and the back driveways, back access to the homes. That hasn't changed other than the fact that when we drive, and I've driven the alleys just to see, it's tough to use as a avenue for your parking or access when every recreational vehicle or boat or others is consuming those spaces. And it pushes the traffic and the parking out to the main street, not how it was designed when the city was developed. Changes came from two-way to one-way for the reasons that were stated. I think those that were had lived there and those that are here made reference to that. But that's not the case anymore. So I think some of the reason that was given this evening, it was cars going the wrong way on the one-way, speed and safety. Well, going the wrong way tells you that that's a problem also, because cars are going the wrong way on the street because it is a one-way. The speed, I think it's already been addressed. Speed bumps aren't going to slow people down. And stop signs, adding them aren't going to save traffic, because what happens is when there's not cross traffic at a stop sign, people simply roll through the sign. That's been shown elsewhere in the city. In fact, we had that in locations where we removed the stop signs and actually made the street safer. There were less problems. As far, again, I'll go back to the downtown. So when we talked about the downtown and the streets that I'll say converge to the downtown, is starting in the downtown was one discussion early on, but realize there's much different study when you talk about MDOT's approval and review on the main street, Monroe Street, and the streets are different. They're not residential, they're commercial. Different type of traffic, different purpose and reasons of being there. And the idea was converting the thought process and discussion was converting the residential streets first that are contributing to the downtown made more sense, and also can be done sooner. Parking on, I think I addressed that with there were comments this evening about those that do utilize the alley. I've had conversations, as the council has, with the city manager regarding the alleyways. Obviously, you make those movements forward. There are improvements and necessities in the alleyways, and they should be anyways, no matter what happens. I guess I'm just going to go back and say, the streets that are adjoining, they're two ways. I understand the comments on 7th Street. I understand the directional being from Monroe Street and goes out past Union and out to Telegraph. However, the concern is that people are speeding down the street one way. Clearly, if there's opposing traffic, it's going to have to be slower, and it's going to reduce speed. And as the Councilman Michelangelo said, the studies will show you that, and examples will show you that. I do support that we need to start doing this, because it just keeps getting pushed back. I also do support the idea and the concept of I'd like to see what it is a year later, because there is proposals about adding parking on the street. That is a geometric configuration and change to make parking. It's mostly toward the western end, the higher end of 7th Street, because there's less driveways to access the residences. But before we make that investment and start changing the parking configuration, and they call them bump outs, I call it bump in, because you're moving it in off the street, and what that might do, we need to see what the flow of traffic is. The traffic counts and the numbers aren't different, and I understand sitting and watching the traffic is one item, but the traffic counts have been assessed. That's what the company that we hired to do. So those are my comments. We need to start somewhere, and I think we need to start looking at our one-way streets, because it's causing some of the problems that were stated here this evening, I think, get rectified when you go to two-way streets. We need to start making this use better than what we currently are. I don't know if there's other comments from council. Councilman Lamore.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to going two-way on these streets. I'm simply stating that I think that it might be a good starting point, which there is a lot of residents that do live in downtown Monroe. Just saying it's a starting point, because I can tell you I have a lot of problems on Godfrey Avenue, which is a one-way street. A lot of people going the wrong way, and that's a lot of the problems here is people saying that people are going the wrong way. What's the solution? Two-way. Now they're not going the wrong way. So bottom line is, where do you start? And I know we've discussed this before. I'm just stating that it's a possibility that maybe it's the best thing to start downtown versus starting out in the residence area.
Your Honor, I'd like to get this off the dime. The traffic controller, we have already approved the traffic control orders. I'm making a motion that we direct the administration to do a one-year evaluation of 7th and 8th Street with the evaluation with a report back by a year from now, the first meeting in August of 2020.
There's a motion by Councilman Angelli, which I guess I'm looking at the city attorney and the manager, that I'll just say it joins the decision that council previously made, and the part of that was, of course, having this discussion. I'm looking to Mr. Buds on the motion, then we need to see if there's a second.
Your Honor, I would say, in my opinion, I don't think that changes the prior action that was taken, but is merely a new directive if it were to be passed by council, that evaluation be undertaken and reported back within the 1 year, the first meeting in August of 2020.
So it adds to the previous action taken by the council.
Your Honor, I would say it adds to, but would not change the substance of what was already done.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilman Angelli that this be, does not change, of course, but adds to the previous action to have an evaluation 1 year from this time, which is the first meeting in August next year.
Support, Your Honor.
Okay, there's a motion by Councilman Angelli, supported by Councilwoman Vining, and other comments from council. Councilwoman Germaini.
One thing I think we need to look at is we need to look at the future 10 years down the road. We are developing a lot in our city, and not to take anything away from any residential, because we all live in the city. When you're traveling down a one-way street, when I'm visiting a city, I don't know which way is one way and which way is not. And it confuses me terribly, because that's how people end up on one-way streets. And with the development we will have 10 years from now, we need to look at that and look to the future, which is why I think we should look at the broad vision, not just what's in front of us right now. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilman Moore?
Yeah, the motion that Councilman Angelli proposes, is that based on changing and transferring to two-way traffic now, or is it just analyzing what it is currently for the next year?
No, it's the action that council took at several meetings ago was to approve the traffic control orders for the conversion from one-way to two-way. That stands. This motion merely says
What would happen after a year?
what would happen after a year, so we all know if it worked or not, okay?
So it'd be of the conversion,
Yeah.
because that.
I mean, the bottom line is, we have the studies, we have the literature search, everything tells us that going from one to two-way is gonna be better for the neighborhood. The neighbors are saying, no, it's not. I understand their position, but why don't we try it and then evaluate it and see what really happens? So then we have something to go on. Otherwise, it's gonna be kicking the can down the road and trying to find other alternatives and never getting anything resolved. That's where I'm coming from.
I understand. Thank you.
Other comments from council? Since there is a motion and second, is the motion understood by council? I see yeses. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Angelli?
Yes.
Vining?
Yes.
Germaini?
Yes.
Lamore?
Yes.
Felder?
Yes.
Mayor Clark?
Yes. So that motion was, just in reflection again, was about the review of the conversion that was passed previously, or discussed and passed previously, on the traffic control order. Okay. Clerk, next item, please.
The next item is council action. Item 2509, adopt Public Act 425 agreement with Frenchtown Charter Township.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we approve the 425 agreement with Frenchtown Charter Township.
Second.
It's a motion by Councilman Angelli, supported by Councilman Lamore, regarding item 2509 to adopt the Public Act 425 agreement with Frenchtown Charter Township. Any final comments from council or questions? I know that we've had that on discussion already in
Your
the
Honor,
work session.
before we vote, I
Yeah.
would just like to thank Mr. Cochran, Mr. Pastu, and Mr. Buds for putting the agreement together. This is the first agreement of its kind between the city of Monroe and Frenchtown Township. It's a really good sign that both of the units of government want to work together in order to encourage economic development within our communities. So I think it's, I just wanted to express my appreciation for all the hard work that the administrative staff did working with Frenchtown on getting this agreement to where it is today.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Angelli. Vining. Jermaine. Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is 2504, approval of FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant agreement.
Well, Mr. Pastu, maybe if there's any leading or information regarding this item? I know
Yes, we're
Mr.
just,
Cochran's here.
I'm going to have Mr. Cochran give a little background on it before we ask council to approve the grant agreement.
Honorable Mayor, City Council, Mark Cochran, Assistant to the City Manager and Economic Development Coordinator. You're aware, we've discussed several times that we've been awarded a grant from FEMA totaling about $430,000, I believe it is, for a project just over $600,000 to purchase 4 properties from willing sellers that are located within the 100-year floodplain, but also within the area of the Heritage Corridor, the River Raisin Heritage Corridor. So we met with Michigan State Police, came down and did a grant kickoff meeting with us a couple weeks ago to get the project started after a few years of delay, and so we're ready to move ahead. And so tonight, asking for consideration to approve the agreement with the state of Michigan to proceed.
Any questions or comments from council? Very well. Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Mr. Pastu, any final thoughts?
Nope, no
Okay.
follow-up to that.
Items on the agenda for action.
Your Honor, if I may just
Oh, yes.
briefly, while we're on the topic.
Yes.
Mr. Cochran, if I could bother you just a moment. How many properties are remaining within the area of which we'd like to obtain?
The entire Heritage
This
Corridor?
would be executed.
This only goes for 4 properties, so
Right.
when we're looking at the entire Heritage Corridor, I think there is 166 properties total, so there's a significant number remaining, going all the way from the River Raisin south to Plum Creek.
Okay.
So with the DNR Trust Fund, we've acquired about 20 so far, and we're looking to acquire about another 20 before the end of the year.
And some of those properties have, I'm sorry, Councilman.
Gives me an idea of scope. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of those properties don't fall within the floodplain, but the ones that do, there's benefits from this agreement because not only does it allow for the procuring the property, but there's also relocation costs within the FEMA. Am I correct?
Yeah, there is, and this grant also covers the demolition costs as well.
That's what it is. Yeah. Yeah, Councilman.
Is this grant leveraged against does that provide match to the DNR grant?
Yeah, so if we need to still shore up some local match requirements with the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, we're allowed to use the properties acquired through FEMA.
Yeah. So great questions because I think it gives a review for all the know that's going on regarding the corridor plan and how that kind of partners with that or associates with that. So thank you. Councilman Lohr, I think you were starting with a motion.
Yes, I am. I would move that we approve the FEMA pre-mitigation disaster grant agreement with the Michigan State Police, Emergency Management, and Homeland Security Division, authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents and agreements, and authorize Assistant City Manager, Finance Director to amend the 2019-20 budget to include the grant.
There's a motion by Councilman Moore, supported by Councilwoman Germaine on item 2504, the approval of the FEMA pre-disaster mitigation grant agreement. No final comments. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Angelli. Yes. Vining. Yes. Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
The next item is the consent agenda, and for item B, approval of payments to vendors, the amount should read $1,056,408.92, 1056-40892.
Thank you. Are there any items on the consent agenda that council wishes to have pulled for further discussion? Any items on the consent agenda from council? Seeing none, are there any items on the consent agenda those present here this evening wish to have pulled for further discussion?
Your Honor,
Yes, Councilman Felder.
I move that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, and the recommendations carried out.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Felder, supported by Councilman Moore, that all items on the consent agenda be accepted, placed on file, recommendations carried out. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilperson Angelli. Yes. Vining. Yes. Jermaine.
Yes.
Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes. Next item, please.
I have no further items, Your Honor.
Council comments, and we'll go through that first. Angela, you were first this
I have
evening.
a couple, Your Honor. First one is, a couple of meetings ago, I had asked the council, and city administration said they were going to take a look at what is referred to as a chronic nuisance ordinance. This is an ordinance where if law enforcement, primarily the police department, are repeatedly called to an address for a variety of different issues, that at some point in time, the property owners have to start paying for the police call visit. And there is one property that I know of in particular that could be the poster child for this, and it's 511 Godfrey. And I know that the police chief knows probably which property it is. And I would like to ask the city administration at the next workshop to advise council over and give them a report of how many times the police department has visited that property in the last 3 years. Because one of the things I think the mayor had asked was for a similar report on other properties where there may be multiple visits by the police department. All right. The only way we're going to curb this type of behavior is starting to charge the property owner for these services. Okay. And this property here, I have seen some of the police reports. It's domestic issues, drug-related issues, alcoholism. It's just a variety where the police are constantly there, mitigating what's going on that property. So I'd like to get a report back with the exact numbers, and I really need to think as part of our neighborhood revitalization program, we really need to start thinking about a chronic nuisance ordinance. So that's the first comment. The second comment that I have is a little bit, I have a very lengthy statement, and I'm not going to go through it all, but I want to highlight some of the issues. And this is not political. This is more informative. But it was really in response to the July 24th edition of the Monroe Evening News, where a former councilman, Mr. Hensley, announced his running for council. And I don't have a problem with a councilman making an announcement or a person making an announcement they're running for council. That's everybody's prerogative. But the comment made was, quote, "Over the past few years, the residents have seen no progress or improvement in services provided by the city." Now, that wasn't directed at Miss Paula Whitman, who he's running against, but it was directed, basically it was a broad brush against the city and primarily this council and past councils. And I really take exception with that. One, because Mr. Hensley should know better as a former councilman the amount of work that the city has done over the years. I mean, not only have we gone through the transition of a new city manager, but we have done things like televising workshop meetings to make our community more informed of what we're doing relative to projects and programs. We've prepared master plans for 6 new parks, or 6 parks, one of which is Labor Park, which we are going to invest about $1.5 million in. We approved a new waste management contract, which provides unlimited waste disposal. Unlimited. We used to have 3 cans, now it's unlimited. Plus, we give residents at their discretion a 96-gallon recycle bin, okay, which we didn't have before. We've done a number of studies that have resulted in a lot of grants. Park and Recreation Master Plan that we did, the River Raisin Heritage Corridor Study, resulted in a $5 million grant to the city for land acquisition. The presentation we had from Mr. Cochran today, based on the city council taking action, doing a sub-area plan for the Lazy Boy, could result in a development that exceeds $16 million. We've done customer relations training. We've increased our GIS capability. We have literally put City Hall on a phone now, so residents have access to the city 24/7. These are services that the city has done in the past 2 or 3 years to increase the quality of life in this community. So I don't have a problem with Jeff running for office. I have a problem with a broad statement that we haven't done anything. And I beg to differ with him. Over the last 4 years, we have spent $13 million on streets, not including the millions of dollars that we've put into water and wastewater systems for this community. And, you know, the list goes on and on. So I just, as a city councilman, when I read a comment like that, my impression is if we don't respond to it, then we agree with it. And I certainly do not agree with the comment that the city hasn't done anything in the last several years. So that's my comment. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Vining.
Yes. Since John brought it up, I'd like to add to that it was offensive, I thought, to the city and the council and all the work that we've done. He also mentioned how much has been spent on studies, which made me interested in how many studies he had to vote or discuss when he was on council. I thought that him being a council member, he should know the processes that we go through. So, yeah, thanks, John, for bringing that out. Also, I wanted to thank our city manager, our chief of police, Chief McCormick, and Captain Wall, as well as Councilwoman Whitman for attending a neighborhood information meeting that we had over at Navarre Library Friday. I get several complaints from residents about the police department, and we were finally able to bring the community and the police chief together, and I thought it was a wonderful start to hopefully more dialogue between the residents and the city. I just really appreciated that and wanted to thank you guys for showing up and having a dialogue with the community. I think myself it was successful, and I hope that we can have more conversations in the future to help build more open lines of communication between the residents and the police department. So I just wanted to thank you guys for showing up. It was really appreciated. And as far as the chronic nuisance order, I haven't read a chronic nuisance order myself, but I do get somewhat concerned because I don't know what items would qualify as a chronic nuisance, but I know sometimes when you're dealing with mental health, drug and alcohol issues, and especially domestic issues, I wouldn't want anybody in a domestic situation or working, having to deal with a family member who suffers from mental illness or alcoholism or those type of things to also have to add worrying about the city billing them for calling for services that many of them already pay taxes to have. So I understand some things that could be on a chronic nuisance ordinance, maybe like drug dealing, things like that. You're making choices, but I always want to be careful about what type of things would be considered a nuisance and how many times would be considered chronic. I'd hate to think of a woman out there or a man being terrorized in their home through domestic violence and would have to stop for 1 second to think about, am I now going to be fined by the city as well as these issues that we're going through in the home. So I would like the city attorney, as he looks into that, to, if you could please let me know what are considered nuisances and what number is considered chronic. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilwoman Germaini.
So in the news this past week, we're saying goodbye to Nortel Lanes. While it is sad that they're not going to rebuild, I look forward to what can be built with what's going on in Telegraph right now. What is possible for that property. So as we say goodbye, let's say hello to something new and exciting. And something else for Mark Cochran to do. That's all, Your Honor.
Councilman Lamore.
Yes, sir. Just wanted to go over some of the highlights of this evening. The Lazy Boy site agreement, the old Lazy Boy site agreement. Glad to see step one finally finished. We have a long way to go, but a very important step in the redevelopment is complete. So glad to see that. I see some of the new board members, or I did see some of them out here this evening. Welcome to the city, and thank you for your service, your upcoming service. I appreciate that. This weekend, we have the River Raisin Jazz Fest this Saturday. Just want to make that out, put that out there, that that's a big event in the city, a huge event that winds down from all the previous park concerts that we've had. So look forward to having that right in my own backyard. And also this upcoming week, I look forward to the vetting process for the ALCC. I want to put that into a conclusion and get that done as quickly as possible, and I look forward to that. And as far as ex-Councilman Hensley, with those comments, those are typical political comments that we can't let get under our skin here in council. It may be something that we find offensive, but that's part of the job that we take up here, and that's something that we have to unfortunately look forward to and deal with. So let's not make it political. Let's move on. Let's just make the city of Monroe better every day that we can, and not think about what those comments were, and move on. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Felder.
Well, Vince, as always, you hide the gems in the consent agenda, and I think a lot of times they're worth pointing out. I didn't want to pull it and call it out and waste everybody's time, but I do believe it's important to draw attention to. With our new contract to the electronic billing, that's going to lower fees for residents in most cases for online billing and allow more flexibility in which to do so. I think that's just, that's awesome. That's going to affect people's pocketbooks and the bills they pay to the city if you pay online. So it's that sort of non-controversial stuff that we sort of hide, and sometimes I just think it's worth shining a light on it. So that's awesome. Glad we're doing that.
So I would interpret that as improving city services.
I think you could interpret it that way.
Thank you.
Regarding the appointments, congratulations to all the new commission and committee appointees. Deb, I see you back there. Shelley on the Housing Commission, and Butch, I'll see you on Thursday. He's been on the committee, coming to meetings for a while now. We're happy to have him as a full member. And regarding the Commission on the Environment, to which he's being appointed, we have a river cleanup this weekend along with the Jazz Fest. So come out in the morning and help us out before going to the Jazz Fest this afternoon. We'd love to have you. And we've certainly done a lot. We hope to do a little more, and we could certainly use your help. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councilman. Just a couple of comments. I might be repetitive, but I think it's important to mention. I see that there are two of the DDA members here this evening, but also the newly appointed. So I want to thank Deb for your interest to serve, and thank the council for your appointment. One of the critical components of having the Downtown Development Authority is to be inclusive, that there's a downtown resident that is on the board. It's actually mandated. So with Deb's interest, that gets filled, which is an unexpired term, but look forward to how we move forward once that term comes to a close, and that you're enjoying serving, that we can talk about a longer appointment as well. Look forward to that. Also on there was the appointment for the Michigan Municipal League. I thank council for approving that, so we have a voice when it comes time to vote at the fall conference, and I will be attending. Of course, council has the opportunity to attend as well as they want, and make sure that we have our voice as a vote in the important issues as well. I want to just follow up a little on Councilman Angelli's on the chronic nuisance. I know that the city manager and I have talked about it before, and I just came to my mind as well as this week with our GIS coordinator, and that moving forward. I know there's many possibilities to how we could utilize that service. I think it's a great service added to the city of how we manage some of that, but I look at the blight record, and I know every once in a while I'll ask about a particular location that's been previously reported, and it made me think about how it's easy because sometimes it's the volume, sometimes it's just where the priority attention is, and how we track that in a JS. And I know that the city manager is working on that because it may be that location. And I can think of a couple, just as a councilman kind of maybe on a nuisance, but I think on a blight as well, to see that timeline moving along when we first got the call about that and steps to proceed. And it's not that they're not proceeding. Sometimes I just don't realize that it might be in the court process. It might be a family issue item. While it doesn't rectify the blight initially on some of the homes or residences, it would be nice to know as we move along with that. So I think there's, whether it's a structure, spreadsheet, just to get those updates, I think. And it's not something that we'll be looking at every meeting or necessarily every monthly, but if we start with that list and know what the next steps are and the date, then we don't have to maybe ask as often, because I know I do, and that would be helpful, I believe. It was already mentioned about the activities this week. I also want to add it might have been mentioned if I missed it, but the art fair downtown and in the streets that will be closed for that purpose, and hopefully this weekend, and that's over Saturday and Sunday, that people come down and participate and look at all the wonderful, not just local art, but also those that also come in as well. The only item that was on the agenda, because I think it's an opportunity, as Councilman Felder did, just to highlight something. We always talk about the backside, so to speak, of the work that has to be done by any department, and sometimes don't recognize the commitment to what you have to do. And one of the items was the public safety mobile video and body cam storage. Video storage doesn't sound like a big deal until you have to store it and have to have it ready, have to be a court, might be under a subpoena to have presented, and it takes a lot of time and effort, and also it's important to make sure that we have those records. So I think that's a step forward, continue not only what the police are utilizing that for, but also when you talk about the interest of the city and getting that information available, whether it's in court or if there's complaints and ability to see those and maybe hopefully clarify what transpired during that contact. So with that, I think that's all I have. Clerk Treasurer Lavoy.
I have no comments, Your Honor.
No comments tonight. Mr. Pastu, any follow-up comments?
If I could just do a quick verbal manager update that I didn't send out, I apologize. I'll run through it fairly quickly.
Very good.
The DDA Riverwalk Streetscape Design Standards, there's you may have received a note that there's going to be a presentation with Russell Design scheduled for August 28th in the morning. Part of it is we were struggling with calendars and what have you to do that. The DDA does use September and October for their strategic planning, and so we really didn't want to get too far behind on that. So, but it will be open to council as well as obviously the DDA board members and other interested stakeholders. The other thing is, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it at the next work session, the new statute regarding downtown development authorities require semi-annual information meetings, and we are going to provide that to the council at the August 19th work session. The long involved zoning ordinance has, at least internally, some of the review to make sure that the language is consistent with the framework by our working group had been involved with, is finally to our consultant for final review and edit. We may end up doing one more quick review of it, but I think the internal review to make sure all the language and everything consistently is done. I know that has taken a long time, but I'm glad it's there. ALCC subcommittee that you established at the special meeting last week. We're going to meet tomorrow night to do a pre-meeting and then hopefully do interviews the following Tuesday with the intent of having something back before City Council at the August 19th meeting. Jazz Festival alluded to, everything seems to be a go with that, staff-wise, and also working with the event organizers. The Labor Park bids are due next Monday, and hopefully they'll be within budget, in which case it would be before the council for approval at the next meeting on the 19th. We did a actuarial evaluation for our retiree healthcare, post-employment OPEB. The amount for our annual required contribution, I know they changed the acronym, but I'm going with the old stuff, would drop our annual contribution by $100,000, and our retiree health care is funded in just a little over 92%, which is really, really very, very good. So we got a good actuarial valuation. It'll be presented to the pension board at the next meeting a week from Wednesday. Olds Night In, no update with that and the Comfort Inn PUD. We're waiting for them to submit their final plans. The river cleanup was mentioned, and some of the information I think I alluded to in one of my last updates is we are working internally with the departments, meeting with our new information technology coordinator regarding performance measures and all of the details that we can provide to provide council and city management and staff with information to help with the management and oversight of the city. So good progress with that, and hopefully more to come as far as a presentation to city council. So I guess with that, the one thing I did put on here, and I didn't go into detail, is blight-related complaints I've been dealing with, and particularly very straightforward with rental properties. It's been a blessing for our single-family homes to have those unlimited when they need them, but I will tell you, I've dealt with 4 issues of just stuff getting thrown out to the curb pretty indiscriminately related to, and I have some ideas that, I think to address that we'll talk about in the future with the council. And I think even at the next meeting, potentially, since Mr. Trio out there, we talked about waste receptacles and dumpsters used in the downtown area. And so we're going to talk about that at our work session on the 19th. And I may tie this other element into that discussion. So with that, I know I don't want to carry on too long. Sorry I didn't give you a written report, but there's a handful of things that we're working on that'll come back to you in the future.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bastu. At this time, there's citizens' comments. Any final comments from those present? I want to welcome those that were here earlier and the residents, but also I see Tony there from the DDA. Congratulations as the new chair of the DDA. And again, welcome, Deb. So with that, we need a motion regarding the executive session.
Your Honor, I'll make a motion that we go into closed session for the purpose of reviewing litigation on 44 and 48 Monroe LLC.
Correct. Second.
Motion by Councilman Icline, supported by Councilman Lamore, to go into closed executive session for the pending litigation for the addresses on South Monroe stated. Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Vining.
Yes.
Germaine. Yes. Lamore.
Yes.
Felder.
Yes.
Mayor Clark.
Yes.